by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I have a dream.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. How you doing, George?
Great, Peter. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm just trying not to be distracted by all of the distractions that are trying to distract us.
Well, we have a few of them. Joe and the Giant Impeachment. I think that was a great little title that you came up with. Or is it just a giant peach?
Well, quite a peach. I was crunched for good ideas, so I just went with the big peach. It's like the big chill, right?
I wanted, if I'd have thought about it, I would have said Hunter and the Giant Blackberry. Because
ooh, that's a good one. Well, we could, there's plenty of there's probably going to be they're going to draw this drama out for as long as possible. I think to try to suck the oxygen out of the room, as they say, and so there's always another show.
That's right. Well, maybe the next show, in the Giant Peach, they travel all around the world in a magical peach, right? And so I thought Hunter and the Giant Blackberry, he could go to Romania and do a pipeline deal there with a Blackberry, and then he could go to Kazakhstan and buy a whole bunch of old uranium for the old Soviet Union, and then he could go to Bobulinski on the boat in Monaco, and it would be the same story, really, as James and the Giant Peach.
Right, and because the juice is on the blackberries, people, they're all preoccupied with the salacious photographs of him and the honeypots on the laptop, but and the drug stories. But it's always the titillating stuff that's hiding, the multi-billion-dollar deals that are kind of lurking in the background.
And it's been a 7-year struggle, but we'll keep hammering away. I like blackberry. I mean, if you think about it, maybe we should just set out bowls of blackberries suspiciously all around Capitol Hill. Rayburn office building in front of Comer's office. He comes out of his office, he trips over all these blackberries. I don't know. I'll think of something.
Well, we started off. When I first met you, I was doing stickers and posters and stuff. Maybe we just need to make some blackberry stickers that say "Blackberries Matter," and you could just, slap them up on the back of a "Don't Walk" sign at an intersection in Washington D.C. You're tall enough, George. You can reach the back of the "Don't Walk" sign. I need a little step stool but the back of the "Don't Walk" signs is a really good place to put stickers because people are always, they have to wait to cross the street.
Yeah.
So they're always standing there, and they're just high enough and out of the way that you can't really take them down, right? So
right.
maybe we need some Blackberries Matter stickers.
What else are you going to do while you're waiting for the "Don't Walk"? And it's funny. I went to Comer's office and I was talking to their staff, and Comer had gone home to Kentucky, and they're. All of a sudden, he's right by the bathroom. His office at Rayburn's right by the bathroom. And all of a sudden, the toilet starts going like crazy, during my video, right? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's happening again. Remember the last time Ted Lieu threw his BlackBerry down the toilet and flushed
That's
it
right.
down.
Ted Lou, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
And I thought I engendered a whole new generation. It's no longer the BlackBerry platform. They've moved it to iPhone now, and they've moved it to Android. But it's still the BlackBerry encryption. But I just was thinking of all these iPhone 15s going in the toilet. So we're going to keep trying.
Yeah, it reminds me of when when Barack Obama got elected, but before he was elected, before he was in office, he was famous for always having that BlackBerry, the old one with the little keyboard, right?
Yeah.
For having it like permanently part of his hand. And there was a big mishigash, as they would say in the camera store, about whether or not they were going to let him keep his BlackBerry when he was the president because they weren't secured. But little did we know back then. Well, you probably knew, but I didn't know that BlackBerry had a whole tranche for government people who wanted to use BlackBerries back then.
Well, the NSA had approved one, and that's the one Hillary said I'm not using. I'm going to use Dmitry Alperovich's version, which is more, hardened and solidified, impervious. Dmitry can get into those government BlackBerries. I don't want to have my emails all over Washington, so I'll just go ahead and over here and take Dmitry Alperovich's version, and that's what happened. And if you remember, Obama got a stripped down BlackBerry. They took the camera out of it. The only thing they left him with is the alphanumeric keyboard, and he could only dial 8 people. So it was like, stay in your lane, Mr. President. And 2 of them were his chiefs of staff.
Right.
Ted Lieu or
not Ted Lieu. Rahm Emanuel.
Jack
Lieu.
Lieu.
Yeah.
Rahm Emanuel was one of them too, and then another one was Dennis McDonough. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the meantime, Alex Jones is back on Twitter. He's doing interviews with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is kicking off his own network, and lo and behold, one of Tucker's first shows, he's talking about aliens again. And so the whole alien thing is coming back again. It's like E.T. Here, I have a little clip where I can show just a little piece of this.
Yeah.
Let's see. Share screen. There we go. And share this. And I'll blow this up. And
well, especially since it sounds pretty clear that the U.S. government's been in contact with whatever these are. You wouldn't confirm or deny that in your congressional testimony. It seems very clear to me. And I won't ask you because you already haven't answered, but that's being done in the name of the U.S. taxpayer, of citizens, of voters, and at some point they have a right to know that. I can't imagine what the justification for keeping that from the public, who you work for, what could that be?
Yeah, I think it's an abuse. So Executive Order 13526. If you read that,
so this is all a patina, right? This is all like, okay, we're going to bless a fake story here by pretending that we're pulling back the curtains on a conspiracy. And again, the purpose of all of this is to divert attention. And you were talking on your Twitter space today about the Joe Biden impeachment. All of these things are bright, shiny objects that are designed. Oh, look over here. Oh, look over here. Oh, Ramaswamy is now the leading candidate because elections are now suddenly real and they're not rigged. You want to talk about the Joe Biden impeachment a little bit?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think all of us are poor players on the stage strutting about nothing to divert the attention away from your appearance last night on the McDuff show. That's
well, gee whiz, thanks.
That's the thing that everybody's trying to keep everybody away from because they don't want to see that. But I saw you guys on the show last night. You guys, you have me interested in Northcliffe now more than ever. This is Northcliffe hanger now. John mentioned Northcliffe. You mentioned Northcliffe. We're going back and forth on Northcliffe. I'm really interested in this Northcliffe guy.
Well, I have these two books. I have to crack them open and see if I can find more juice for you. on Northcliffe. But yeah, I have the history of the times in 2 volumes that was cited quite a bit by Douglas Reed in his descriptions of Northcliffe. One of the things about the book, The Controversy of Zion, is that Reed is so conscious of the fact that he's going to be attacked for untoward ideas about a particular cultural group, that he dots every I and he crosses every T. He when he says something is an opinion, he says this is an opinion, and when it's not an opinion, he cites the sources, chapter and verse. So I do have all of his Lord Northcliffe, except for the things that he was an eyewitness to. He was Northcliffe's personal secretary for a few weeks during the period of time that this was happening. But all of the other things that are said about Northcliffe are in that 2-volume set that I've got.
I did not know that. Who is McDuff? McDuff is a nickname that I gave a son of a FBI.
It's John asking you the question, I think.
John wants me to plug the book. Okay, yeah, McDuff Lives. Yeah, McDuff Lives. And this guy has an incredible life. It's one of those kind of Lawrence of Arabia lives. He works for, in the Navy, he works for MacArthur, and he's there in all the battles. And even after the World War II, post-Japan, China patrolling the Yangtze. I mean, it just Kuomintang, the whole thing. Then he goes to the FBI, and he's working there at the time the paperclip guys are coming in. And he gets these 68,000 files, and he has to figure out which 18,000 in there are the Nazis. And then he goes on to, they pull him out of there, and Bobby Kennedy pulls him in to the White House, along with Dean Rusk, the Secretary of State, and Joint Chiefs of Staff, to potentially plan the invasion of Cuba and also get control of the CIA. So it's a great story. That a whole bunch of people went to the Mystery Island there in Connecticut to help John collate all the stuff, and then John wrote a beautiful book. And like your book, Peter, is only $10.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to translate this for people who may be joining late. But yeah, it looks like they're frequently bought together too. You could see that people who buy Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy are often buying McDuff Lives, The Life and Untimely Death of Thomas F. O'Laughlin Jr. Just for people who are catching up, George met John several years ago, and they connected, and John told George a story about his father in the FBI, and George anointed John's father McDuff, which is a Shakespearean reference that George can go into, and so we started calling John's father McDuff, and so that's part of the reason that John's channels are. It is the reason why John's channels are called McDuff Lives, and the reason that the book is called McDuff Lives is this whole kind of convoluted nickname story. But McDuff is John O'Loughlin's father, who he wrote a book about, who was an FBI agent, who was involved in some weird stuff at the end of his career, and ultimately passed away under kind of weird circumstances. And John has been working for the rest of his life trying to figure out what was going on there. And George and the research team have all been a part of all of that. So yeah. I hope I surmised that well enough.
Yeah, and there was the Nemesis here is Dulles and Cabell, the same people that did the Kennedy assassination, Richard Bissell, and they're all mad that Kennedy ousted them and didn't let them do the Bay of Pigs, or Kennedy would be embarrassed. At least that's what Bobby Kennedy Jr. thinks in his book. And so McDuff's going at this deep state that John Foster Dulles had put in along with Allen Dulles in the two previous administrations with Dwight David Eisenhower. So there's a conflict here. And of course, he almost dies from a sickness. Bissell has this health alteration committee, the father of the U-2, the father of the keyhole bus-sized satellite. That guy, CIA, National Reconnaissance Organization, that guy is probably the guy who makes McDuff so sick when he comes into the Kennedy White House. And then later on, he has this untimely death with this fast cancer. So, you know, it was good to see you guys both talking, two authors talking. John went through what you're going through right now, which is how do I manage, where do I go to promote the book? Who show do I go on? You know, which way's up? Should I concentrate on Slovenia more, or should I work on Austria? You know, these are the kind of questions you have when you get on Amazon. All of a sudden, you got to worry about 135 countries to market your book.
Indeed. And to that end, Jimmy Dore is going to have appearing live. It's really interesting watching Jimmy Dore and Kurt Metzger, because Jimmy Dore is ahead of Bill Maher, but he's behind Kurt Metzger, and Kurt Metzger is behind us, but he's catching up quickly.
Jimmy Dore has a book on the top 10 behind you. Is that what you're?
No. But Jimmy Dore he's got a highly watched show on YouTube. He's got a channel on YouTube, but it's always the same way. It's always these people who were started off on the far left, right? Who suddenly become aware that the world that they perceived is not exactly the way that they thought that it was happening. And it's the opening the curtains, the Wizard of Oz curtains, and discovering that there's another wizard, and then going to the back of that booth and finding out that there's another wizard. And so Jimmy Dore is slowly but surely coming to the conclusions that the people who watch this channel.
I see. You're saying there are popular people with big channels that are also coming to this red pill or clear pill realization.
Right. So I'm going to go. I bought some VIP tickets to Jimmy's show, and I'm going to go to Jimmy's show on Sunday. I'm going to see if I get. I already sent him a book, but I'm going to see if I can talk to him about the book on Sunday. So I'm pimping the book.
Yeah. Well, that'd be kind of cool. You know, I think it's good. It's good. This is a good time of year because under the auspices of a Christmas gift, you can send the red pill, and then if it, you know, is a little too hot, you know, a little too spicy, then you just say, well, I thought you would appreciate a story about a Navy guy or an FBI guy, a G-man, or a military guy. You know, you could always kind of, and with your book, you could always say, well, this isn't really an anti-Semitic book, or it's not. It's really
It's not an anti-Semitic book. Yeah,
I know. It's a book about power. Yeah,
right. It's a book about power, and it's about how it's a handbook for supervillains, as Klaus Posting W says. And when you start to and it was interesting because as John was going through the book with me last night, one of these things that I kind of did on purpose that turns out to, I think, be a really good idea is that I summarized what every chapter was about in the first paragraph of every chapter. So you can read my book by reading the first chapter, the first paragraph of the next 24 chapters, and then the last chapter, and you can get most of the juice out of my book. If you want specific details on particular techniques and things like that, you can dive into each chapter. But the book is designed for people who are in a hurry, who need to consume something quickly. So if you're a radio talk show host, or you've got your own podcast or something, and you want to try to get up to speed on this book, this book is kind of designed to be promoted by somebody who doesn't have a lot of time to put into it.
And you guys nailed the perfect formula last night, because what McDuff did is he said, I'm going to read you one of those snippets, you know, at the beginning of the chapter, the 3 paragraphs or whatever. And then McDuff reads it, and then you react. And then he says, well, I'm going to go into, I think he read the first one. Then in like the 10th one he read. And then, oh, that's a good one. And then he said, okay, now 21. And then you said 22. And so you guys each read one more. And then you're like, what are the other 18? What are the other 18? You got to buy the book. You got to buy the book. So and John read it so beautifully. You know, he's got that beautiful voice and he's got the beautiful presentation. It's like, wow, the show is really the next show that I want to see you guys do is he reads your treatment and then you say, well, here's what I was thinking or whatever. And then he does another one, just like you guys did last time. Just pick one or two or three, because that really gives you a flavor of it. If you talk too much, right, about it in the abstract, it's not as good as what you wrote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you wrote is, that's the juice, and then you go into your reaction to that. I think that worked well last night.
Yeah, but I do also think, the supervillain part of it is important, but the thing that really gives it context to me, again, this could be 24 rules or principles or protocols, whatever you want to call them. It could be 24 guiding ideas for a super secret organization that is as old as time, that it could have been made up. It could have been in the Lord of the Rings or something, right? But what gives it context is the fact that Lord Northcliffe basically was taken out, it wasn't as dramatic as being shot in the middle of the street, but it was pretty dramatic. Like the way that it went down was pretty dramatic. And that only leaves you asking the question, if these things were made up, then why was it so important to people to make sure that nobody, that these things didn't see the light of day?
Because I think the thing is, everybody can say, well, they can predict the future with the book. And so, like right now, you look at the principles: secrecy, infiltration, gradually putting in people into sinecures or positions where they can't be fired or not elected. The deep state, it's a deep state, right? Get two warring parties. I remember you guys saying last night, fighting against each other, and get the derivatives or the dividends from their fight. Don't fight it out, get the dividends, right? And that is the uranium. That's the bioagents from the old Soviet Union. And you put them in Ukraine, hold them there until somebody else has ambitions with bios or nukes, and then you sell them, and then you make 15% profit at Clinton Global Initiative. So,
Well, what we were going to talk about today, what we are talking about right now with the Joe Biden impeachment and the Tucker Carlson aliens this is all Principle 13, and I'll read from Principle 13 here. Wait, maybe I can share this. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can share this. Present. And here we go. Principle 13, distracting the public. The power elite manipulate public opinion and maintain control by focusing the masses on basic survival needs and distracting them with media discussions on non-essential topics. They strategically insert agents in the press to influence public discourse, presenting their agendas as unchallengeable, accomplished facts. To divert attention from the genuine political issues, they introduce new topics like industry and entertain the masses with amusements and cultural events. They exploit liberals and idealists to promote fanciful theories, masking the truth which they believe is their exclusive domain. Ultimately, the power elite plan to reveal their governance as a solution to significant problems they have orchestrated over centuries, confident that their manipulation will remain undetected. So that's an example of one of my summaries that I put at the beginning of a chapter. But isn't that exactly what all of this is right now? The UFOs, what's going to happen? If you impeach Joe Biden, you're going to get Kamala Harris. Do you think anything is going to change? It would be one thing if it was more than just taking him out of office. If it was, actually treason is a legitimate high crime at this point.
Yep.
Treason is a legitimate crime at this point. Like, that's got serious consequences besides just losing your place in office. And I know I don't want to go full banana republic here, but these are things that were taking place before he was elected president. So,
and that's my hope, is that when we get to the network of the secrecy, that the whole thing, we pull the deep state up by the taproot, and maybe we only get a whack at it, a part of it, but you may as well go for the whole taproot. This is what McDuff did. McDuff was this book about John O'Loughlin's dad, Tom O'Loughlin, this FBI agent. They were going for this Office of Security, and this Office of Security was created because they had, smeared this guy named Alger Hiss. We talked about this in the last show, and we created a fear, psychosis, if you will, about communists in the government. And they were all just FDR New Dealers, right?
No, they were communists, George.
Of course, yeah. So anyway,
this is where George and I totally disagree. But continue.
Well, anyway, I doubt that they were going to have the state own everything or anything like that. I'm just saying Alger Hiss wasn't, and I want to say his, but anyway, he wasn't proposing that. He was just saying, hey, we should have a United Nations and Security Council so we don't have World War III. What a great idea. We should have WHO to share our best practices in health, not to shut down countries at a whim, right, with the WHO. So everything he created was contorted toward lockdown and these kind of war gaming biosurveillance state type goals. And so that's the thing is you look back in time at these places where people were trying to cut the Gordian knot. They were trying to be the hero and go in and cut the Gordian knot and break up the Office of Security. And that became the Diplomatic Security Services. So every time from then on, they changed the name, is about all they did. Every time they wanted to run a covert action, they would run it through the State Department because it has diplomatic immunity, Diplomatic Security Services. So when I went to the Benghazi trial, who were the 4 first witnesses? Diplomatic Security Services, DSS-2, DSS-3, DSS-4. So we have the formula. We've taken the McDuff formula. This is why when McDuff first told me his story, I said, "Ooh, sounds good. This sounds like a guy who's going at the deep state. I think we can do that." It reminded me so much of going for the BlackBerries and the server for the BlackBerries, the laptops, and that's what we have to get to. We have to get to the codex, to the nerve center. We can't just go, like you said at the opener, can't just show Hunter Biden with a crack pipe and hose. Hoe and blow is not going to get us to cut that, to get to the center of the network.
Well, I know that you met Alger Hiss once, and so you have a warm and fuzzy feeling for him. Okay, but I met Al Gore once, and I do not have a warm and fuzzy feeling for Al Gore. And I think that you're mischaracterizing Alger Hiss. I think that there's a lot about Alger Hiss that was to not like. He might not have been working directly for the Soviets. He might have been working for the Soviets' bosses as far as creating an international socialist globalist government. But there were the Vona cables show that there were all of those people that Joe McCarthy said were communists working the State Department. There are still communists working the State Department. That was how effective the press and media attack on the Red Scare was. The framing of it as the Red Scare. There are communists running this world right now, and they were in the State Department when Joe McCarthy was revealing them. And Alger Hiss was a big kingpin in that organization.
I think, as far as the evidence is concerned, okay, which is the Nona files and so forth, if you actually look at the things that he supposedly typed on the Woodstock typewriter, okay, this is what he was convicted on at his trial, right?
Right, but the Vona cables weren't decoded and then declassified until 30 or 40 years later. They were only decoded. They were only, I think, declassified like 10 or 12 years ago.
But I think if we look at it, okay, let's just look at his big 3 things, okay, which is the WHO, okay. Did he want the WHO to be this kind of doctor for the world? Yes. That's one of those things that you can share. You can share medical knowledge, you can share vaccines, you can share whatever, and it's not going to affect anybody's economy too much. You know, you're still gonna,
unless you do what the WHO is doing right now, and if you read my book, it's hard to assume that they didn't have that in mind when they set it up in the first place.
Well, I think, well, first of all, the WHO was suggested and planted to Alger Hiss at the conference. That wasn't even on his agenda. That somebody met with him at a dinner party and suggested that
Bertrand Russell or somebody.
No, I'm trying to remember who it was that the guy, the Chinese doctor. There was a Chinese or Korean doctor who bumped into him accidentally 3 different times at that conference and said, "Hey, what about the WHO? Hey, what about the WHO? Hey, what about the WHO?" And finally, there was these 3 different dinners. They said, "Okay, we'll put it in as a draft," because they had already closed the proceedings. But Alger Hiss didn't go to that conference with the idea that I want the WHO. He went to the conference with the idea, we want a UN Security Council because we don't want World War III. We just had a war where 25, 30 million people had died. It was a repeat of a war that had happened 20 years before with another 20 million people dead. So
both Hegelian dialectics, one trying to get the League of Nations and the second one trying to get the United Nations. I mean, look,
but I agree. But what I'm saying is that he wasn't trying to say, let's create a CIA biosurveillance control mechanism for Allen Dulles. They wouldn't have taken him out if he was thinking of that. He was thinking of, hey, let's stop these wars before they get too out of control. And the idea of a Security Council would be that there would be enough big players with enough armies that they could go in anywhere and go, hey, not you kids, knock it off. And then that I don't know. I guess that's a communist idea. I guess that's a anti-fascist idea or whatever. I think it's just an idea for peace. Just look at that, or look at Bretton Woods, which Bretton Woods is we should have some kind of metal behind our currency. There's no deep shenanigans going on there. He's not trying to change our monetary system over to the ruble, right? Why did they take him out? Why did they convicted him with a typewriter that didn't exist at the time he supposedly wrote these things. The typewriter didn't exist until 7 years later.
Well, I think the American nationalists took him out. And I think that ultimately this winds up becoming, no matter where you are in the world, if it's in the United States, American nationalists versus globalists. If it's in Great Britain, it's British nationalists versus globalists. If you're in France, it's French nationalists versus globalists. And the globalists are trying to eliminate the nation state as a entity. They want to get rid of nation states. And so I think that, and again, this is part of the reason I think Northcliffe was taken out. I think he was a nationalist. I think that William Randolph Hearst, the reason he was taken out is ultimately he was a nationalist, and they needed to neutralize the nationalists. It's all about globalism. So you create a world war, which is principle. I'm looking at my list of principles. Principle 7 is you create world wars so that you can demonstrate how terrible and awful nation states are. But what you're doing is you're financing the nation states' defense departments in order to be able, and then you're creating Hegelian dialectics like sinking the Lusitania, the Zimmerman telegram, or Pearl Harbor, in order to create these world wars in the first place, because the Hegelian solution is the League of Nations. The Hegelian solution is the United Nations. And so those people who are responsible for creating those things are in on it. They've always been in on it, and they knew the wars were started in order to create it in the first place. And those people aren't good guys in my book.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah. But I'm saying the people who took him out did that, not him. He didn't do that. The people who took him out did that. They took him out because he was on a different track from what you just said. I agree with all that. The United Nations was turned into this steering wheel for the deep state so they could take it to their own purposes for one world government.
But I go back from that. My contention is that the World War was started because they knew that the solution at the end of the World War, after 100 million people are killed, would be that we have to have an organization so that this doesn't happen again. And that's the point of the UN.
Right, but I would agree with that. I'm just saying that there was something in his idea, and I believe it was the same idea that Kennedy had. It was the same idea that Jimmy Carter had, and the same idea that maybe Ronald Reagan had, and that is the idea of self-determination, that a country should manage its own affairs and do its own voting and so forth. And we really shouldn't have to get into nation building and assassination and all this other stuff. The people of that country who've lived there all their lives really should be able to elect their own people and get going. And then we should trade with them in a kind of a fair way, and not hire a bunch of thugs to go in and kill everybody and then take, have a standing army of occupation like United Fruit was doing, and Smedley Butler. So that
principle one in my book is the introductory concept is the founding manifesto that represents the worldview of the power elite, a secret group wielding significant influence, emphasizing might as a source of right and viewing political freedom as an illusion. They advocate for control and manipulation over the masses who they deem incapable of self-governance. The power elite values despotism, utilizing violence, terror, and deception in governance. They highlight their use of social tools like liberalism, faith, and capital to maintain dominance, asserting their authority through force and the necessity of strict control. This document offers a glimpse into the power elite strategies and their stark vision of the world order. And producer Jessica has a video that she wants us to watch, which I think it's 22 seconds, which I think is germane to the conversation that we're having right now, which is Klaus Schwab. It looks like it's 20 seconds long, and we'll start it right here.
What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process. What we have to confront.
So, so Klaus is just kind of restating this thing. This is an ongoing program, and what's his name? I can't even remember the name of the guy we're talking about now.
Alger Hiss.
Alger Hiss, yeah. He was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, but I'm saying that he wasn't for the creation of a deep state. He wasn't for saying let's militarize the State Department and have a sort of a Gestapo, and then the CIA, whenever they want to do a covert action from now on, we don't have to worry about what the president says. We'll just hide it under the auspices of diplomatic security, right? We'll just say we'll give everybody diplomatic passports, and we'll put all of our agents, and everybody will be a DSS officer.
But honestly, isn't the implication of being a proponent of those types of policies undermine the idea of the sovereignty of a national state?
I agree. That's what I'm saying. The Office of Security, what happened was they created this office, they called it the SY. The idea of diplomatic security started mainly to protect the diplomats when they're traveling. And Robert Lansing, during the war, they were afraid that there would be torpedoes or these people would be shot and so forth. German spy, they had sunk some kind of ship off the coast. It wasn't the Normandy, but they were trying to blow stuff up. They had spies. And so diplomatic security used to be, hey, we got to make sure as this guy's traveling that there's a safe passage. But that turned into something else after 1945. What happened was, and this goes back to your reading the witness tree, everyone that was in our old Abwehr organization, and I've got all these agents all around the world in all these different cities, I just basically, and CIA agents, OSS guys, I just give them a diplomatic security badge. I just say, you're now the diplomatic security guy in Warsaw, right? And now I've got a far-flung spy network that's out of the control of the president of the United States. These are people that aren't elected, and it's just the deep state. And the deep state was created the day they gave those badges out, where the president doesn't have any oversight. Remember, this is all top secret. And the president just looks down and says, well, you're running the Office of Security. I don't know who's running. I don't know that these are ex-Nazis or who's running these Nazis into our State Department and giving them all these jobs. What I'm saying McDuff was doing is saying, hey, Hoover's saying, how are all these Nazis coming into the United States?
Right. And Dulles is working on a supranational level.
Yeah.
And McDuff is working on a national level. He's trying to support the security of the nation. And there's an argument that Dulles made, which is that it's for the national security because the United States is in this pitched battle now with the Soviets, and that we need to have the technology that the Nazis had before the Soviets get the technology that the Nazis had, which would be a great argument if McDuff and the people that McDuff worked with didn't know that Harry Hopkins had been sending all of the secrets over to the Soviet Union for 6 years when they started trying to figure out where the leaks were.
I'm not saying Harry Hopkins didn't send the metal, half of the metal from that was refined at all the, Piketon, Ohio, and all these different gaseous diffusion plants. Absolutely, I think it's insane that we give the Russians half of our.
We gave them the bomb, and then we fried Ethel and Julie.
That's not Alger Hiss that gave him the bomb.
That was not Alger
Klaus Fuchs that gave him the bomb, and that was a Rothschild, like a debate society that gave them the bomb. But I'm just saying that the people a new book out. Can I mention one other book?
George, you can do whatever you like. I'm just driving the back of the fire truck here.
Okay, well,
Okay.
get me off the big tree.
Okay, all right, here we go.
So Bobby Kennedy has a new book out, and it's called Wuhan Cover-Up, and I think it's great. And I said this last time, I'll say it again. I finished the book, and I've gone through it a second time. It's just a ringing endorsement of all of our researchers all over the world that have been contributing to this body of knowledge over the last 3.5 years, ever since March 2020 on the Potomac. You'll read it and you'll go, oh my gosh, there it is. Somebody else finally recognized it. And for that, having a guy like Bobby Kennedy with, father was trying to take out the deep state, his uncle was trying to take out the deep state, it is you should feel very good. Okay, having said that, Bobby Kennedy makes a point of talking about how his father also was doing this. And his father, Joe Kennedy, being sort of a nationalist, I guess, but he's also saying, hey, Hoover, you need to watch what's going on over here, because what's happening is the CIA is bringing all these people in under diplomatic immunity, and they're building a spy network that's going to be more powerful than you pretty soon, right? And in the, not this book, but his previous book, Family Values, he does talk about that, about how his father did testify in front of the Hoover Commission. I'll just say, in 1956, my grandfather, Joseph Kennedy, sat on a panel that first sounded the alarm about the growing power of the CIA and clandestine activities. The Hoover Commission urged Eisenhower to limit the CIA's powers, which find us involved covertly in international affairs of practically every country which we have access. 2 years later, when Uncle Jack was U.S. Senator, he publicly castigated the Dulles brothers for their secretiveness, for their condescending disdain for those who would challenge omniscience, and for their reluctance to give up the luxury of their exclusive control in our world affairs.
All right.
Right.
So my analysis of that, again, and this is off the cuff, so I reserve the right to be completely wrong in this analysis, is that Joe Kennedy was aligned with the Fabian Socialists in Great Britain. He was the ambassador to the Court of St. James. his son Joe Jr. and JFK both went to the London School of Economics, which is the Fabian training ground for economics, and that there was a power struggle between the roundtable types and the CIA American nationalists, and Joe was probably not on the side that was in control there, which is why he was complaining about things. And that would be my kind of off the cuff. I would probably demur to somebody like Richard Grove to come up with a more astute analysis on that. But
well, Churchill asked him for his resignation because he felt like Kennedy was slow to support Great Britain in the war effort. And then they asked, and then FDR relieved him of his duties, and I can't remember who he replaced him with, Cordell Hull or somebody like that.
Right.
Somebody who was more pro-war. But, Kennedy was like, he made the comment, Britain just wants to keep its possessions. After the war is over, okay, again, this idea of self-determination, and Kennedy was a big admirer of FDR. After the war is over, we should have a great reset. All these countries that are now colonies, like East Pakistan and not even Pakistan, India and all these other countries should have their own government and should have their own self-determination. So I guess that's a communist idea. At least that's how Dulles interprets it.
It's more of an imperial. Yeah, I guess it's kind of communist. But what they wound up doing is they set up countries like Canada with privy councils. So they appear to be a separate country, but in fact they're not. New Zealand, Australia have similar kinds of governments that are accountable in some way to Great Britain. They have a certain amount of autonomy, but not complete autonomy. And I think a lot of Australians and New Zealanders are figuring, and Canadians are figuring that out right now.
Five Eyes is another way of suborning your sovereignty. And so, there's a fine line between communism and self-determination, I think, especially at that time. But I'll leave it at that. You can get McDuff's book and kind of paint the picture, and get Peter's book that kind of talks about the game plan of the Dulles brothers.
And by the way, I'm not kind of as hardcore on this as I used to be. I used to buy into the capitalism versus socialism argument. But at the end of the day, government there. If you have a government, and there are people like Larkin Rose out there who argue that you don't have to have a government, which I think is great if you have if you have a majority of people who are critical thinkers. I believe that is what's the word? It's what? Doable. It's doable. Okay. But I don't think that we live in a world where you've got a majority of the people who are critical thinkers. I think critical thinkers at this point are probably way less than 1 or 2% of the people on the planet. And that's by design. That's not because we're intrinsically not critical thinkers. Little kids are born as critical thinkers. They ask all kinds of questions. The idea of school is to train all of the critical thinking out of people. But to that end, what I was going to say is that I'm not saying that there aren't parts of government creating programs for the general welfare. That's in the Constitution. It's in the preamble of the Constitution. I think that the general welfare is a good thing. It's how do you determine that? How do you figure that stuff out? And how do you do it in a fair way? And how do you do it in a country how do you do it in any place where the media is controlled by money? Money controls the media. And that's the struggle that you and I are dealing with right now. That if you want to support this channel, if you want to support reporting like George Webb, you have to go to buymeacoffee.com, and you have to go to buymeacoffee.com/George Webb, no E, the number 1, and you can support George and his ability to continue to bring you the information that he's bringing you, like he did today. like he does on his Substack. If you go to georgewebb.substack.com, you can subscribe to George Webb there. And if you want to buy George a 3X large shirt, you can go to thedukereport.com/shop, and you can send it to the P.O. Box, which is P.O. Box Business Suite Supercenter, 1227 North Peachtree Parkway, Box 189, Peachtree City, Georgia, 30269. And if you want to support this channel, The Duke Report, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/The Duke Report, and you can become a member. Where on Saturday of this week at 2:00, members of The Duke Report will be able to participate in a Zoom call where you can ask us questions directly and interact with us that way. And then there's other kind of things that you get. You get early access to my materials for my book and things like that. But
I want to say Bobby Kennedy mentioned your famous AI treatment of 1 month after the assassination, where Harry Truman has the speech where he regrets that when he created supposedly an arm of the president, which was the CIA, that it would basically grow a brain and be an arm and a brain going around doing covert actions without consulting the president. And Bobby Kennedy talks about that he makes a mention of that speech that you put to AI, to his voice, and says, this is what happened. I regret creating the CIA because it grew a brain. The arm detached itself from the president and grew a brain and started meddling all over the world. And
exactly as Allen Dulles and Nelson Rockefeller had planned.
Yeah, and they basically were proud of the fact that they lied to the president. He would show off by lying to the president. So, that's not real. I mean, that's a fundamental chain of command problem. And we'll talk about it again. I'm really interested in seeing the Vona file that says, Alger Hiss sent this.
Okay, it's in a book called Treason by Ann Coulter, and I'll go find it for you. How's that?
We don't have to do it right now, but I mean,
no, we don't have to do it. But I know where it is. It's in Ann Coulter's book Treason, which is a great book, by the way, because Whittaker Chambers wrote like a 900-page book on which was written before the Vona papers came out, and I think it's called, what's it called? Black. I can't remember what Whittaker Chambers' book is. And then there's another book.
Wasn't Whittaker Chambers' brother, though, like a member of the Dallas Petroleum Club, and he was the flunky who couldn't figure out how to put the chain on the oil drill, so they made him a 2-bit spy.
I have to go review. I haven't read it in 10 years, so I have to go back and review.
Okay.
But there were two giant books that were written about Joe McCarthy that supported Joe McCarthy's point of view. And but it wasn't until the Vona cables got decrypted and declassified that Ann Coulter wrote her book, Treason, which is eminently, she's a great writer. It's eminently more readable than those other two books. So we have 3 comments and then we can get out of here. Cindy said, I bought a few for stocking stuffers. I'm assuming books she's talking about for my grandchildren readers, and a kid by the side. If road 1, 2, and 3 will be out soon. We'll get your new one soon, Peter, for Christmas gifting. My new book is not going to be out by Christmas. I am back to work on my old book, though. I took a little short vacation to push this book out, but the new book is not going to be out by Christmas. Shannon, I wanted to address Shannon here. Shannon says George needs to share his info with other influencers. Now, Shannon cut and pasted this from something that she had said to me in a private chat earlier. So she must obviously want to get this message out here. She says, Alex Jones went from 100,000 to over 1 million by taking advantage of a hole in Google. No, Shannon, he didn't. Okay. You said this in the private chat, but I tried to keep it private, but you want to put it in the public chat. So I'm going to make it public. Alex Jones has a giant platform. Okay. There's no hole in Google. Okay. Alex Jones has a giant platform. Tucker Carlson has a giant platform. Okay. When Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones get together, it's going to blow up. It's going to break the internet. Okay. And there's no algorithms involved. Okay. It's just pure popularity that's going on there. It took 6 months to patch. You don't know that. You don't know that. That's a story. It's a cool story, but you don't know that. You have really, this is the juice. You have really valuable information that needs to be disseminated. So each person can have a broader and deeper schema about the interconnectedness of what's occurring. That's totally true. And we are all flawed human beings, and we do everything that we know how to do. As we've talked about on the show many times before, when you're a citizen journalist, you're trying to take on 5 jobs, I think 4 or 5 jobs. If you're a newspaper reporter, you've got people back in the office who are researchers. So if you need a FOIA filed or you need to go look something up at the National Archives, you can send somebody down to do that. But when you're a citizen journalist, you got to do what George does. You got to suit up and show up, and you got to go down there. Then you have to research the stuff. Then you have to report on it. Okay. Reporters work for publishers. Publishers are the people who are telling them which parts of their stories are important and which parts they need to highlight and which parts they can forget about. And then you've got publishers who are in charge of making sure that those stories get out there in the world. So you've got 4 or 5 different jobs that one person like George or one person like Peter is trying to do at the same time. So we're doing the best job that we know how to do.
And let me just say to that, it's a good point, and I try to take advantage of every opportunity. I was on for 2 hours with the Elon, it was more toward the end, but Elon and Alex. I'm hearing Elon talk. I've talked to Alex before. I've talked to Jack Versovic before. I've talked to all these guys before. I'm waiting to talk. I didn't get it called on. And the same thing with Tucker Carlson. I was on the 2.5 hours with them, didn't get called on. But Mario Nafal, to his credit, did call on me once with Matt Tiermond of Project Veritas. And I took Matt Tiermond through, who actually was doing the gain of function. By the way, Bobby Kennedy agrees with me. He said Ron Faucier 71 times in his book for gain of function. And he said the phrase gain of function 362 times as proof positive that this cabal is trying to weaponize these old Nazi labs, drugs from these Nazi labs. So I explained that to Matt Tiermond, where the gain of function really was. It wasn't Jordan Walker. It wasn't Jordan Walker dancing with the laptop. And it destroyed Project Veritas. That's it. That was the end of Project Veritas, right? That was 18,000 people, 11,000 people with James O'Keefe. And I said, there's a guy named Jordan Walker that you're fighting with the laptop. Did you realize he wrote this white paper, which is the remdesivir white paper that gave us that as a standard of care?
That might have killed more people than COVID.
Yes, probably did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wanted to see the mutations, because that's their big bet, that this will be the thing that stops everything, right? This is the shield, that's their shield they're betting on. Well, James O'Keefe went into oblivion, right? So I understand why Mario's not calling on me with Elon, and he's not calling on me with Alex Jones. The first thing I would say to Alex is, why aren't we covering these Biden encrypted communications? It seems if you want to get to what they're hiding, you would go to the encryption. If you want to get to what they're saying to each other, you go to the communications devices. It seems like the encrypted communications devices is the juice. Why aren't we going there? They don't want somebody asking that question because it's not about freedom of speech. It's about actually news. The same thing with Tucker Carlson. He interviewed Tony Bobulinski, who showed those devices and said, this is how they did it. These are the tin cans that with the secret string in between. Okay, I would have asked Tucker the same thing. Why didn't you ask him about the Blackberries? Why aren't we subpoenaing those Blackberries? Boom! There goes your whole agenda with all your aliens and all, you got all these alien shows and all these alien guests lined up for the next year. We're going to have huge ratings, and now we're going to look like the guys that are standing in the way of getting to the encrypted communications. That's why they didn't call on me. So it's not a hole in Google. It's a hole in their ethics. It's a hole in their ethics.
Yeah. And like I said, we're doing the best that we know how to do. This is the best that I know how to do right now. And the reason that I wrote this book is because I thought when I wrote it, that this is a kinder and gentler way to get people to think critically. That's all. That's my entire MO for writing this book. It forces people to ask questions, and critical thinking begins with asking questions. Right now, we are caught in a trap where people decide whether or not they want to believe Tucker, or they want to believe Alex, or they want to believe somebody else. And believing a story is not critical thinking. That's picking a team and then rooting for them like it's a football game. Okay, that's not thinking. Well, the reason I wrote this book was to get people to start asking questions. Why is it like that? Why is it that that Mario Nafal doesn't ask George to ask a question again? Okay, because I think George's explanation is George brings hand grenades into the room. Okay, and for all of the censors out there, these are metaphoric hand grenades. Okay, these are not literal hand grenades.
Thought bubble,
okay?
thought bubble.
Okay, George brings metaphorical hand grenades into the room, and if you're the host of a show, then look, if you listen to the video of George, and I've posted it on my Rumble channel, George has got it on his Twitter feed. But if you listen to George talking to James O'Keefe, it's a very, very civil conversation. James O'Keefe was engaged. James O'Keefe retweeted the information in real time that George gave him, and 2 days later, Project Veritas was gone. Okay, so there are very real consequences to people who have a lot to lose. The good news about George and me is that right now, like, it would be hard to take anything more away from me. I live in a little apartment, in a nice neighborhood. Okay, but I'm not. I don't have 6 people working for me that are going to lose. Alex Jones has a dozen people working for him that are going to lose their jobs. Okay, if he says the wrong thing, if he asks the wrong question. And it was funny when he went on to the Tucker Carlson show. The first thing that he said is, "You've got a really nice studio here." And I was thinking, Alex, are you thinking about moving? You're going to go get a barn someplace and set your studio up in a barn, move out of Austin, because Austin isn't what it used to be. It's like I can see the gears turning in Alex's head. It's like, got to get out of Austin, got to go someplace where it's a little bit safer for me, and cut my overhead. Because the one thing that George and I have a great liberty is to talk about things that other people can't talk about. If I didn't work for the Shoah Foundation Institute and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, I couldn't have written this book. Okay, because I'd get killed. I still might get killed, but like George said, put it right here. Like, make it quick. But at the end of the day, there are things you can do. One is that you can start to be a critical thinker yourself. 2 is, if you want other people to be critical thinkers, you could buy them this book. You can buy them George's book. You can buy them McDuff's book. Okay, they get people to start asking questions. Stop picking teams. Okay, start asking questions. What my first conversation that I ever had with George Webb was about somebody who I had been working with, who I liked, and his name was Steve Bannon. And George asked me a couple of questions that he'd like to ask Steve Bannon. George would still like to ask Steve Bannon those questions. I'd still like to ask Steve Bannon those questions. And the questions are relative to the public persona that people put out there. They like to have a persona as a mask. And so the bigger you become in the media, the more of a mask that you wind up having to maintain. And the reason that is usually because you've got people that are depending on you. You've got a staff, you've got a family, you've got mortgage payments, you've got all kinds of things that are going on that wind up becoming vectors. In my next book, Reframing Reality, I talk about mice, money, ideology, compromise, ego, family. These are all ways that the powers that be can tug at you and that they can control you. And fortunately, when you're at the lowest level of citizen journalism, where you've got an audience, but you don't have a lot of overhead, you've got a lot of flexibility. But the more up the chain you get, then the more constrained it becomes. So it's kind of a tough spot. If you were Alex, George, like, what would you do if you were Alex?
Well, I mean, if I was Alex, I'd ask about the encrypted BlackBerries. I mean, that would be the first thing I would do. I'd have a show tonight and I wouldn't stop. I'd keep going around the clock. Maybe I would sleep maybe a couple hours a night.
Alex doesn't sleep. He's like you.
Right. But I did what I thought was right. I put my money into going out and doing these charrettes and my life savings. And I'm going to be going tomorrow to Michigan. And, I'm going to be meeting with 8 or 9 people, including, Karmadoc, frontline doctor in Kosovo and a frontline doctor when she came back. And that's just one of a pack of people that are going to be doing a charrette. And so my thing is, don't hide, behind a studio or whatever. And, nothing wrong with having a studio and having 20 people fly in when you want to do a special. But we publish every day. I do a Substack every other day. We do a show 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Look at their schedules versus, our schedules.
And look how many hats we're wearing.
We're go. So we're trying as hard as we can. And we're certainly open to suggestion. Buying a coffee is a great way to get started if you want to move the ball forward. Or like you say, buy the book and give the book to somebody is even better, because then you bring somebody over who's going to watch the show and retweet it and say, "Oh, Peter Duke, author Peter Duke." That's my suggestion. It has to be incremental. That's why we got banned on Amazon 3 years ago. What did we do? We went into our own publishing business. Until we couldn't, literally, the price of blue ink tripled. We couldn't print anymore. So it was like we've tried a lot of things to get the word out.
Yeah, indeed. And I'll stick with Amazon as long as they'll have me. But if that disappeared tomorrow, then I would just have to move on to another scenario.
That very well might happen with you, because they are doing that. Media Matters is going around to all the outlets saying, ban this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Last comment. Hunter Gatherer said, "My stealth and the power of illusion and the stealth power and the illusion of democracy just arrived a few moments ago." Yoo-hoo. Yeah. Lots of people are getting it. And thank you for that. I think I'm still #1 in new releases in nationalism, not democracy. #1 in nationalism, #1 in fascism, and #1 in radical thinking. So who to thunk it? Who to thunk it?
I know how much you want to get your big book out, but I would love to see an illustrated version of this book.
I've been working on illustrations here. I have something I can share before we leave for the people who are good enough to hang out. Let me see. I've got to go find the right thing to click on, which is this, I believe. And yeah, I was working on money laundries last night. I posted some of them on Twitter. But let me see. Share screen. Some of the concepts are more complicated than others, but so hang on a second. So this is one. Wait, I got to click off of here. There we go. Here, this is another. These are.
I think each page, you reward in the illustrated version. These are all great, and this could be a home game where you just caption this, These are all great.
This one, yeah, this one doesn't have, let me see. I love this one.
That's a great one.
I tweeted this. My caption for this on Twitter was any big tech company that sells digital inventory, this is probably their business.
My caption, Ukraine.
Yeah, here's another one. And
These all have kind of
and this is where Bobby Seale's the Bobby Seale of it all. This is the rap music business. I didn't pick these characters. I kind of put in a rough prompt. I said music executive, and this is what it came up with. So
these all have kind of an Edward Hopper Nighthawk, look and feel to them,
Yeah, indeed. So there it is. So I am working on it, George. I am looking at each chapter now, and I'm trying to figure out what the right image for it is. But
I say put them all in there, and give people the illustrated version, because it's kind of like almost there's I want 5 of those. I don't just want one. If you did 5, I want all 5. I know it's more expensive. But I think people want the images, because they're funny.
Right. Well, again, they are funny, but they also get people to think. They're subversive that way.
Yeah.
I want to say
Mimi, to the point. They're hit home. Yeah.
Yeah. I subversively want to get people to think. So anyway, Allred says, my mother would have washed all money. She thought it was filthy. All right. With that, I will say, George, I'll see you on Saturday at 2:00 Pacific, 5:00 Eastern, and you might be in Michigan, so it'll be another time zone there. And other than that, we'll see the rest of you guys on Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. And with that, George, it was great talking to you again today.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, talk to you again, everybody. Thanks.
Merry Christmas. Buy somebody a book. Buy somebody a book.
Exactly. These ship really fast.
Yeah.
Like they ship really fast. All right. With that, good night, everybody. Bye, George.